Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions and the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. As a bonus episode, I'm sharing my LinkedIn Live event with Carolyn Elefant from May 5th, 2023 about whether AI will be the end of the billable hour. If you're listening to this on the date of publication, then you only have until tonight to register for Carolyn's law firm startup AI Accelerator program. Link to that in the description. Also, check out MyShingle.com to read Carolyn's blog post on whether AI will kill the billable hour, which is what inspired this LinkedIn Live event. I'll be hosting more LinkedIn Live events, so make sure to connect with me on there and click the bell on my profile to get notified when I'm going live. Thank you to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, links to both in the show notes, and more on them later. You can sign up for the waitlist for my subscription seminar at subscriptionseminar.com. Please share this podcast with someone you know who might be interested in it. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the recording of my LinkedIn Live event. Just in case my network hasn't heard of the great one of the earliest legal bloggers out there, Carolyn Elefant, go ahead and give yourself a little introduction.
Thanks, Matthew. So my name is Carolyn Elefant, and as Matthew just said, I have been blogging at MyShingle.com for 20 years now. It was one of the first law-related blogs, and it focuses solely on the issues related to solo and small firm practice, everything from the nuts and bolts of getting started to the bigger picture issues about why independent law firm ownership and entrepreneurship is so important in the profession. And in my day job, I am still a practicing attorney. My law firm is a national practice that focuses on power, pipelines, and property. That's renewable energy and people impacted by pipelines.
And how long ago was it that you went solo?
It's been a long time. I think I'm going on, it's over 25 years, 28 years maybe, I think.
So you know what you're doing. You have some experience with being a solo practitioner, with starting your own law firm.
Yes, I've been out there for a while doing it. So it's really great to see that people continue to start firms and take a risk and bet on themselves. It's really very exciting.
And as somebody who went solo a little over 13 months ago, you know, when you Google how do I go solo, I mean, you get MyShingle.com. Like, that's one of the resources out there. You'd think the ABA would have more resources for you, but MyShingle has more recent and modern resources than even the American Bar Association does.
Yeah, that's always been really where the homework has been. I've always tried to keep the blog ahead of the curve. So even when I started my blog, people were still talking about networking and sending faxes. And I was, even at that time, talking about email and other more modern ways of running a law practice.
But even more than just the blog, you also had things like My Legal Closet, right? Which was an early foray into your punification of what you're doing with services you're able to provide to attorneys who want to go solo. So let's talk about the Legal Closet, and then we'll get into your newest punification of what you're offering to law firms to start their own firm.
Okay, so what the Legal Closet is it's essentially an information product for lawyers that provides background, everything you need to know about I used to call it the art, the science, and the ethics of drafting an engagement agreement or a retainer agreement or whatever you call it. And it talks about all the ways to provide for those things in your agreement. What lawyers often forget is that, you know, if you're dealing with clients, it's important to put this information into your retainer agreement, and you can have a lot of control. You can exert a lot of control over a relationship with clients if you just provide for certain terms and conditions in your engagement agreement. And so the agreement talks about that, and also kind of the regular sorts of agreements that attorneys may use in their practice, like dealing with independent contractors or web developers. And so I've got templates for all of those, as well as something like, I think it's an 80 or 90 page book with citations to legal issues that explains all of the legal issues and ethics issues behind the particular clauses. It's got clauses that you can kind of pull out and drag and drop into an agreement. So if you've already got an engagement agreement, but you need a clause for disclosing that you're working with somebody in outsourcing legal work to a foreign country, you can just drag and drop that clause into your already existing agreement.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's been available. That's been available for some time, and you've updated it. I've seen over the years as more and more things are coming out. Like you said, you're trying to stay ahead of everything. So your most recent offering is related to this article, this blog post that you wrote about how soon before AI kills the billable hour. And of course, as the subscription attorney with my podcast Law Subscribed, as soon as I got that, I've been a longtime subscriber to your blog. I read that. I was like, oh, I got to have Carolyn on, and we got to do a LinkedIn Live about this, because this is something I've been talking a lot about too. But before we even get to the blog post specifically, let's talk about what I think is the impetus for it, which is this new offering that you're providing, the law firm AI Accelerator.
Right.
So what's the inspiration behind even doing that? And tell us a little bit about it.
So having blogged for 20 years about solo and small firm practice, and also written the book Solo by Choice about starting a law practice, I've got tons of resources on the nuts and bolts of starting a firm. And so people have always suggested to me that I should offer a course that takes lawyers who are interested in starting a law firm or maybe adding a practice area through that process. So just doing a course on that alone is not that interesting to me. I've written about the topic many times, and honestly, I don't find the process of setting up a trust account or incorporating your law firm to be all that interesting. So a class like that would put me to sleep. But when AI kind of came on the scene back in November of 2022 with the launch of ChatGPT, I started seeing it being referred to as a co-pilot, a co-counsel, a digital partner. And I started thinking, if you're starting a law firm by yourself and you've got all these clunky tasks to take care of, what better way to do it than to incorporate AI as your digital partner? You're not going it alone, and you're also removing the hurdles where many lawyers get caught up. I mean, there's a lot of lawyers who delay the launch of their firm by 3 or 4 months because they can't come up with website copy. Well, you can use artificial intelligence to move that process along. The same thing with putting together a business plan or learning about new practice areas. AI can really help expedite that. And so I see it as really removing a hurdle to getting a law firm started and making the process of starting much more interesting and exciting. It's really now something not to dread, but to explore and to embrace. And so that was the impetus for the class. And that's why I'm so excited about it, because it's a whole new way of doing business that nobody is doing yet. It's also a practical way to, everybody's talking about AI, and there's all these, the doom and gloom articles about how dangerous it is and how risky it is. And I feel like unless you apply it to a practical use case, you're not going to fully understand it. And so the idea of marrying this use case of new business, starting a new firm or a new practice area with this theoretical issues of artificial intelligence is a really effective way to learn about the new technology.
And I have to imagine how much interest it got at ABA Tech Show this year in 2023, which of course you were on the planning board, and I was in one of your groups, talking about the subscription model on the finance track. So, but I went to the event that you and Tom Martin did, which was almost like a impromptu, sort of last minute thing thrown together, and it was just a packed room. I mean, there's so much interest in this topic, and even what you two were talking about there is born to be true, which is it's changing. It's still changing.
Yes.
It's changing so fast. And for our profession, that's a hard thing to do. So I even kind of wish it was 13 months ago that you were launching this accelerator.
Yeah.
Not that the technology was there, but at least for me, if I was starting my practice now, I would have signed up for this thing immediately. But because you do have some FAQs on there. And so before we get into the blog, which is next, I do want to know, who is it right for? Is it right for somebody who's already started a firm and is a year plus into their firm like me? Is it more for somebody who maybe they're at a firm right now and they're thinking about starting their own firm? Who is this program right for?
So there's a couple of different categories of people. Most immediately, it's very right for people who are in the process of getting a law firm started. There's a lot of hands-on information or hands-on projects that we'll be working on, in addition to having speakers who I've been able to draw from through my contacts in the legal profession. It's also for people who are thinking about adding a practice area or transitioning their firm, maybe lawyers who are currently at law firms who are thinking about retiring and looking for setting up a part-time practice, lawyers who are currently staying home as parents who are looking to transition into the workforce. There's a lot of material that can be valuable, even though we're doing hands-on assignments. If you're thinking about starting a firm, there's a hands-on assignment that'll put together a marketing plan and some of the marketing plan and a business plan. So it's good for all of those groups of people. When I looked at the collection of people who have signed up so far, it really seems to be quite a mix. There's some people who are in the process of starting or who have just started. There's some people who are thinking about it. But I would say the overwhelming majority, many seem to have active practices already. They're just interested in how to use artificial intelligence in the solo and small firm space. And there really haven't been that many programs that have come out so far that really do a deep dive to how to incorporate AI into your practice. And so there's a lot of people, like I said, who seem to have, relatively successful practices, and they're just looking for hands-on use cases for incorporating AI technology. So that they comprise a big part of the cohort also.
So we'll get into the speakers next, but first, now let's talk about this provocative blog post that you posted, which was how soon before AI kills the billable hour. So, you do talk about different articles and different pieces in that blog post, but what was the inspiration behind posting this? And did you intend it to be so provocative?
So part of the inspiration was I'm working with another organization on another AI panel, and it was actually a question that came up when we were talking about topics to cover, and it was actually one of the other potential speakers who had sort of asked something or pondered about that question. I started thinking about it further and doing some research, and I found that article online and it was a very clever article by two lawyers at Foley Lardner who had used ChatGPT to write an article, and you had the human person working on the article and the ChatGPT, and the human person disclosed that it took him 10 hours to do a deep dive into these issues and research them, and the AI took 10 minutes. And I started thinking, this question about whether the billable hour is going to be around, this starkly suggests that there could be some problems if AI can do in 10 minutes what a human could do in 10 hours. And so I started thinking, what does that do to the big law business model, or a business model where people are paying for time rather than for outcome? Now, I don't have that problem. My practice isn't like yours. It's not entirely subscription, but wherever possible, I try to at least assign flat fees to the projects that I'm working on. So it's been a long time since I've really thought about the profitability of the billable hour. But for many people starting a firm, it's the default. It's what they've done at another practice. It's what they learned about in ethics class in law school. Much of the discussion focuses around lawyers inflating their hours, lawyers getting sanctioned ethically because they overreported how many hours they billed or lied about it. So it still remains the default for a lot of attorneys, and I think that it can't be that way anymore, because I don't know how those firms will be sustainable.
Right, and the way that they sustain themselves is adapt by not billing by the hour and using AI. I had on my podcast, it was episode 18, I had the co-authors of The Legal Singularity, Abdi Adid and Benjamin Allery, who are, of course, with Blue Jay as well, which is a legal tech AI company. And this is one of the things that they're talking about in their new book, which comes out in a couple of months, is how lawyers with AI will beat lawyers who don't use AI. And so this, I think, is an important part of that conversation, which is lawyers who are using AI will quickly find that they are not able, and this was part of that conversation, was they will quickly find that the best way for them to make money when they're using AI is not the billable hour. It would be absurd to 10x your billable rate to account for the fact that it only takes you 10 minutes to do what used to take you 10 hours. So you're still making the same amount of money. Because if you're stuck in the billable hour mindset, that would be how you make up for that. But is any client going to want to pay $10,000 for 10 minutes? I don't think so. So how do you repackage, what your value is that you're providing? And just looking at going back to this list, which I posted in the chat here on this LinkedIn Live. If you're listening to this as a podcast episode, go ahead and go to Carolyn or my LinkedIn page, follow us, and also look for this LinkedIn Live so you can see in the comments. You have Victoria Collier. I think I'm pronouncing your last name right. She's all about selling your law firm and being able to have like a brand name and a predictable revenue model as part of that. Regina Edwards, who's like the flat fee attorney. And, Lawyers on the Beach, right? She's one of your speakers. So you have Kimberly Bennett, who's like, I'm the subscription attorney, but Kimberly Bennett has been doing subscriptions longer than anybody. And she even has a company, Fidu, which is all about helping law firms launch a subscription model for their practice. So like you have these speakers, and Tom Martin, who is LawDroid, who has an AI product for lawyers to use. So and more speakers, but like these are the people that you've brought into this accelerator program that you and them can teach the participants in the program basically how to do this, right? Because it's really an unknown, it's a brand new thing. So is that why you've brought in these speakers too? Like what was like why did you think I need to bring in speakers and not just do this yourself?
So there's a lot of topics that I can talk about myself. I'm sort of a jack or a Jill of all trades. I've dabbled in a lot of these different things like flat fee models. I've never really successfully done a subscription model just for my particular clients. But I think that it's best to talk about people who have very well developed systems and who are really they're leaders in that space and also very passionate about the work, because I want to show people in the accelerator program that this isn't, it's not just some obscure people who are, sort of experimenting with this stuff behind the scenes. These are people who are very established and respected in the legal profession who are dealing with these kinds of issues. And again, I think what's different about this program is that these things typically haven't been thought of at the inception. As I said, billable hour is something that's sort of default. Even the topic that Victoria Collier is talking about starting your law firm with the end in mind. A lot of attorneys who start a firm just kind of started on the fly. I did myself without thinking about the whole idea of building a valuable asset that you can sell and really cash in on at the end. I mean, you can work and earn fees while you're doing it and then cash in on the end. But all of these different models have components that work better because you're incorporating technology. And a lot of the people who are going to be speaking, may not have yet incorporated or integrated AI into their practices, but are using technology in a way to achieve a lot of efficiencies. And I want people to be able to see successful examples of that.
So another tool that you mentioned in your article, which now, again, I've posted in the chat here for the live stream, you mentioned Casetext's Co-Counsel.
Yeah.
Which I've had a chance to use and play around with. I got let into that early access beta phase, and I've even gotten the domain to legalpromptengineer.com just because I feel like this is a thing.
Oh,
like this is
smart.
like the future of, it's even up and running. It's a live website. Like this is the first time I've mentioned it in public, but the idea that like the future of lawyering might even be like legal prompt engineering. So instead of doing research the way we used to do it, well, if the AI is able to crawl all of the cases ever, the quality of the prompt is really important with a Casetext Co-Counsel, just like with ChatGPT, just like with Bard or Bing AI. If you change the slightest thing in a prompt, you could get a totally different result. When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney, or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form at scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show. One thing that I think ChatGPT does better than Co-Counsel from what I've seen so far is it allows you to do sequential prompting based upon prior input. So Co-Counsel, at least, they haven't really built it for that yet, as far as I could tell. And even little things like abbreviating state names or abbreviations for anything gets you a totally different result than having to spell it out. So even like little tiny changes like that, you could actually get a different outcome for like your input. So if you put in, does the WARN Act apply? And I've actually troubleshot this. So like, does the WARN Act apply in like if you have this many people being fired in these different states, and you abbreviate the states, it will say yes. But then if you spell out the states, now it's like capturing that, oh, there are multiple states here, so it's not focused. So it will tell you, no, the Warren Act probably doesn't apply. So like even just the slightest, smallest change like that can get you a totally different outcome. So I don't think because of that, I mean, this could be in 6 months, that problem can be solved. We're moving super fast. But at least right now, you still need to like double, triple check everything. Like it will give you the cases, read the cases, like read the memo. Don't just assume the answer is correct with co-counsel. It's still a massive time saver, but I don't think it's replacing lawyers, at least in the short term. What are your thoughts on that, Carolyn?
Reviewing results is something that lawyers are accustomed to doing. I remember when I was an associate, I was working on a memo on some horrible, boring issue. And I got so fed up that I just went to a hard copy treatise. That should date how old I am. And I just pulled the cases from the footnote, the annotations, and just plopped them into the brief. And I turned it in. And then it turned out that I didn't read them. The outcome was the opposite of what we wanted. And the opposing attorney found out about it, and I was mortified. So the bottom line is that lawyers have always had to read annotations and cases that Lexis spits out. You can't just pick up a case and cite and put it into a brief without reading it. And so this is no different, is you're generating the output. And one thing I think that case text and co-counsel do really well is they make it very easy for you to check the sources. If you ask it to do a legal memo or a summary, it'll summarize the cases, and then you've got an easy link to go right to them. So you don't have to go run and open up another window and, search for the cases and pull them down. Everything is there in front of you. So it makes it very easy to verify the outcome.
Yeah. And I mean, and just to be clear, like, I don't mean to be like, I think Case Text Co-Counsel is a brilliant product, and I'm a huge fan of it, and I will be continuing to use it in my practice. But I'm just being a little bit critical, not of the product, but you have to be careful as the lawyer, because I think you're absolutely right, Carolyn. Like we can't outsource it to the AI and assume it does the legal work for us. We're not there yet, and even if we were there, like then I am really worried about the future of the legal profession, or what is the value that we provide. Is the value that we provide the personableness, the emotional intelligence. And so it's really going to change, how it is part of your program is like talking about the value that you could provide, because the billable hour doesn't make sense in this world. It just doesn't make sense. And that's the point of your post. That's the point of your program. And I'm a fan of the subscription model, obviously, the subscription attorney, but there's more than one way to do alternative fee arrangements. It doesn't just there are so many other, which is why I'm so glad you're having all these other speakers coming and talking about it too. Though I do think, and I encourage viewers or listeners as they're listening, to at least think about how the subscription model can apply. And I'm sure Kim will go into that in more detail for the program. So let's talk a little bit more about the program then. So like I sign up, what does that get me?
So if you sign up, it gets you access to the month's worth of classes. I'm still finalizing the schedule now. It's going to be a combination of both live lectures and recordings. If you can't make a lecture, they'll be recorded, and then the transcript will be generating using AI. So you'll have a very accurate transcript to go along with the recording and the slide deck if you've missed a course. There's also definitely going to be hands-on assignments. I think one of the days we're just going to be spending on using ChatGPT and other AI tools to develop business models. And what we'll hopefully do in the classes, it'll be very interactive so people can compare results and interact with each other and see what kind of results their output is generated, and to just get some feedback from other people on, what their impression is of the output. So, sometimes it's good to be able to get feedback from other people, which you don't always have the opportunity to do when you're working by yourself. What I've told people in the class is the materials are overwhelming, because in addition to everything in the course, there are also two pre-recorded sessions, one on the ethics related to opening a law firm, which I'm going to qualify for CLE, and the other on the legal ethics and the legal compliance and ethics issues relating to using AI. So that's another recording. So what I've told people in the class, there's so much material, everything can be overwhelming if you try to just listen to everything. What I really want people to do is to come up with 3 projects at the beginning of the class and just focus on those. And so if there's extra material, just keep it in a resource space. They'll always have access to it, but really just focus on the materials that are going to help you advance and complete those 3 goals. Because the one thing, online education is great, but the one beef that I have with it is that and I've done this, everybody is guilty of this. You sign up for 1 million classes, they sit on your desk, you never even open them up, or you open them up and you kind of listen to it and fast forward on the recording and you never do the assignments. And so you don't get the value out of them that you should. So that's one thing that I really want to make sure of, is that people actually complete things after this class is over.
And that's one of the benefits of charging. And I think what you're charging is very reasonable in light of all the value. Talk about a flat fee. Like, how do you price a flat fee product, right? Like your accelerator program is like an example of how to price a flat fee product that has incredible value for the amount that you're paying. And it has to be enough that people are going to do it, because you want them to be successful, like with the outcome. And I think it's a really clever approach to sort of bring together all these different pieces, right? So you've got asynchronous learning with the pre-recorded stuff. You've got synchronous learning with the live sessions. And then you've got the workbook and materials and the group sessions. So like all these 4 elements, there are some courses out there that are like just like the pre-recorded stuff or just live sessions. And that's not, everyone also learns differently.
Right.
So I think like being able to incorporate all those different aspects, especially the group learning and getting feedback right there. I feel like that's like an incredible value. And when people are paying, they have buy-in. So they're there and they're participating and they're learning from each other. And I had Steve Fretzen on my podcast, and that was one of the things, like, he does these mastermind groups. And it's like, well, I asked him, why do people pay to like be in groups with just somebody else? Well, sometimes having a master facilitator there and that you're paying for forces people to show up. You're invested in it, and then you'll get more feedback with a master facilitator than just a bunch of random people showing up, to network and for coffee or something. So I really look forward to seeing like the graduates or like the alumni like from the program. So like, you got to start a LinkedIn group or something, Carolyn, for like the alumni, for like go through your program to like stay in touch and show what they're doing. Like I think about like the JEP program, which is the Justice Entrepreneurs Project, which is more of an incubator. Yours is an accelerator. Yeah. Like programs like that are more incubators, but I know they maintain like a robust alumni network. And over the years, they all help each other. So, I feel like the attorneys who go through your program are going to be some of the movers and shakers in the future of the legal profession. So it's very cool that this is an offering that you're providing. Did you have that in mind when you started it, or is this something that I'm just sort of bringing to your attention that it could be?
I didn't necessarily have that in mind, but I will say that, as sometimes when I reach out to people who I haven't met or, introduce myself, they will tell me that they've read my book or that it helped them, inspire them to get their law firm started. So that does make me feel really good, because I think the more solos and small firms that are out in the world, the more opportunity there is to expand access to justice. Access to justice isn't just an issue for lower income people or the vulnerable population. There's many people in the middle class or who can't afford legal services or who don't know how to select a lawyer properly. So I think that the more options that people have is just better for the profession at large.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And that access to justice angle is also something that like these incubators focus on. So I know I'm connected with some of them. So if they're watching or listening to this, if you're in one of those programs right now, I feel like this would be a really beneficial add-on to that kind of a thing with such an AI focus, because they are teaching lawyers how to like innovate a business model and start that. So there's a little bit of overlap, but not this AI focus. That's something that's wholly unique. And also on the access to justice side, I want to get your thoughts on this. So with moving away from the billable hour and using tools like AI that make your practice more efficient, I think, it's my opinion, and that's part of why I have the podcast, is that not only can you increase access to justice, but you could also make more money as a lawyer while reducing prices per client, right? Like in the conversations you're having and with the other speakers and the planning of this accelerator, like, is that a part of it? Like what are your thoughts on being able to innovate using technology and not just increasing access to justice, but also increasing profitability?
Yeah. So somebody I was speaking to asked me, I was talking about AI co-counsel, and they said something like, aren't you concerned that you're not going to be able to charge as much for the work that you do if AI co-counsel can do a brief in 10 minutes? And I said, no, to the opposite. I expect more work to be coming in, because right now many clients can't afford to pay for the fees that I charge for appeals. But if I can use co-counsel to identify the issues that we want to pursue and help draft some of the arguments or take care of just some of the standard sections like standard of review, I can reduce the cost of briefs. So I could make a $5,000 brief or a $5,000 appeal something that's really affordable. Whereas, ordinarily I might charge $15,000 or $20,000 for that. I mean, it wouldn't be the same level of detail. It might not cover the same issues, but it would still get the job done. So I think that there is this whole category of cases that never get brought because people just don't have the resources, and they are not necessarily people who qualify for legal aid, and they're not necessarily the type of cases that you can just do as DIY. So there's this whole category of, maybe like employment cases that get dismissed on summary judgment that somebody just doesn't have the resources to file an appeal for. Or maybe it's, challenging pursuing a cease and desist case instead of just backing down and reaching an agreement on it because it's, an issue that's important. There's all these like cases in the margins that don't get brought. And it's very important to the justice system at large to bring those cases. It helps clarify the law. So I agree with you there. I think that there are more opportunities and money-making opportunities as well.
Yeah. And this is, I can't remember who coined the term, but this is the latent legal market, right?
Yes.
And if you can efficiently provide legal services that are still effective and ethical and all that, then you could reduce the price, but then there's this huge market opportunity. And I've received pushback, Carolyn. I wonder if you've heard this too, where they're like, oh, it's not a market opportunity because LegalZoom, trustandwills.com, they're kind of serving this market, but it's not legal advice. It's productized services that stop at the legal advice level. So I still feel like there's market opportunity there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, because if you take out all of the, the time and effort that goes into putting together one of those documents, it frees you up to give people advice and to make it more something that's more personalized. So yeah, I definitely agree with that too. People are not necessarily just going to go to those do-it-yourself services. And the other thing that's appealing about do-it-yourself services isn't just the cost, it's also convenience. But again, technology helps lawyers make their services more convenient. And if you can get something done with AI much more quickly, maybe you spend an hour or two, work one night to make yourself accessible and, free up hours during the day to sort of make up the time. I mean, it allows you to just, kind of adjust your schedule to make yourself available. So yeah, so I think that's an important distinction. I think people will still seek out personalized advice where they can get it.
Yeah, and so one more article that I think sort of touches on this is the ABA Journal yesterday. So on the date of recording, we're May 5th, 2023. Your blog post went out on May 3rd, but on May 4th, the next day, there was an article titled, "How Are Big Law Firms Faring in the First Quarter? Well, billable hours are at a 15-year low." That's the headline, but it starts with a phrase, and this is of course just reporting, right? So this is not the opinion of the reporter. This is they're reporting on data like from the Wells Fargo Legal Specialty Group. But the first line is, "Demand for legal services is down slightly." Is it though? Is it down slightly? I think what you and I just talked about shows that there's actually a lot of legal opportunity that's not being captured because billable hours are too expensive or inaccessible or inefficient, and that demand for legal services is actually, there's a latent demand. It's not that they're down. Maybe big law legal services demands are down, or because the article goes on to talk about how while billable hours are down, profitability is slightly up because they're raising their billable hour rates, because that's how they make up the difference.
Right.
So clients love when they raise their billable hour rates, right?
No, I've also seen it. It seems like this is a trend, but if you read David Latt, formerly of Above the Law, who does the newsletter Original Jurisdiction, he's got a podcast now where he interviews sort of the movers and shakers in the big law space. Except it turns out that his podcast is really primarily about people who have left big law to start boutique firms that are succeeding incredibly because clients couldn't afford the rate structure that those attorneys which had charged when they were at big firms, or because they were conflicted out. And so so maybe that's part of the reason why big law rates are down, because big law partners are getting smart, wising up and leaving and starting their own shop and taking clients with them. So that's another alternative.
They should, if you're a partner at a big law firm and you're thinking about starting your own firm and you want to use AI, I hear there's a really cool program that's starting up. So Carolyn, as we wrap up today's LinkedIn Live conversation, tell us, how, we're May 5th right now. How long do people have to register for it?
So the registration will stay open until midnight on Monday, May 8th. And after that, it's something that will close. They can access it. I'll have to put the link in the comments. It's got the landing page has a weird URL. But if you go to MyShingle.com and you look under blogs, you can probably find it there. But I'll put the link directly to the landing page if people want to sign up directly.
Great. And the link to sign up is also in the comments section for this LinkedIn Live event. And if you're listening to this podcast episode either over the weekend or Monday morning and you still have time to sign up, that link will also be in the show notes. So Carolyn, if anyone wants to follow up with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way to get in touch with me, they can get in touch with me through a DM on LinkedIn or at elefant@myshingle.com.
Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for sponsoring this show. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with someone you think would find a value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email Kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.